If you've ever heard of the Episcopal Church, the Presbyterian Church, or a deacon at your local congregation, you're using vocabulary invented by 3 short letters written almost 2,000 years ago. But these letters didn't just give us words, they gave us an entire organizational blueprint, one that turned the church into a Roman household with a patriarch at the top, and that blueprint is still running. So let's open these letters and look at exactly what they built. First, some context. Most critical scholars date 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, and the Titus to the early to mid-2nd century, written pseudonymously, that is, in Paul's name, by a later author. Pseudepigraphy was a common and accepted ancient literary practice. We'll call this writer the author of the Pastoral Epistles. Now, the foundation. The Roman domus, the household, was not just a family. It was an economic, social, and political unit under the absolute authority of one man, the paterfamilias, the male head. He controlled his wife, children, slaves, and free men. The author of the Pastoral Epistles took this structure and mapped it directly onto the church. And here's the thesis statement of the entire organizational scheme from 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 5. If someone does not know how to manage his own household, how can he take care of God's church? That single sentence tells you everything. Domestic authority becomes the prerequisite for church authority. Run your home well, and you're qualified to run God's house. Now the offices themselves, the Greek words behind them became the names of entire denominations. Episkopos means overseer. It gives us bishop and the Episcopal Church. Presbyteros means elder. It gives us Presbyterian, and over centuries, the word priest. Diakonos means servant or minister. It gives us deacon. And the chera, widow, names a fourth office most people have forgotten, the enrolled widow. Let's walk through the qualifications. The bishop must be married only once, manage his household well, keep his children submissive, be temperate, respectable, hospitable, an apt teacher, and not greedy. The elder carries similar requirements. And here's a scholarly debate worth flagging. Some scholars argue bishop and elder are 2 titles for the same role in these letters. Later, church history made them distinct. Presbyterians chose elder governance. Episcopalians chose bishop governance, a split rooted in how you read these very texts. The deacon shares the moral qualifications. Married once, good household manager, not greedy. And the enrolled widow, age 60 or older, married only once, known for good works. Notice the connective thread. Every single office, bishop, elder, deacon, enrolled widow, requires the person to have been married only once. Not must be married. Married only once. The author values marriage highly but frowns on remarriage, even after a spouse's death. This is not incidental. It's the structural glue of the entire system. But the system has layers, and some are more revealing when you look closely. 1 Timothy chapter 5 lays out a detailed system for widows. A widow over 60, married only once with a reputation for good works, gets enrolled, placed on an official church list. She receives financial support from the congregation. This is essentially a proto-pension system, and it makes the enrolled widow a formal office holder. But younger widows, those under 60, receive very different instructions. The text tells them to remarry. Why? The author says they might become, quote, idlers, getting about from house to house, gossips and busybodies. Strip away the moralizing language and look at the structural effect. A younger widow who doesn't remarry is a woman outside male household authority. She moves freely between houses. She speaks independently. The author's solution sent her back into a marriage. The enrolled widow over 60 stays under church authority, which is male authority. The result is a closed system. No woman exists outside a male-headed household. Now return to the deacon qualifications. 1 Timothy chapter 3 verse 11 contains a single ambiguous word that has fueled centuries of debate. The Greek word gynaikas can mean women or wives. If it means women, this verse is the earliest evidence of female deacons, deaconesses, as independent office holders. That reading finds support in Paul's letter to the Romans, where he calls Phoebe a diakonos. If it means wives, the verse simply describes the wives of male deacons, no independent female office at all. Some scholars argue the author couldn't fully suppress women's existing roles in the community. Others say the context points clearly to wives. The ambiguity itself is historically significant. Entire denominations have split over how to read this single word. The married only once rule didn't stay on the page. It traveled through centuries of church history and lives today in Eastern Orthodox ordination practice. Here's how it works. A seminarian who wants to be a married priest must marry before ordination. Once ordained, if his wife dies, he cannot remarry. And if he's ordained while unmarried, he must remain celibate for life. This is a direct traceable institutional inheritance from the Pastoral Epistles, compared to other major traditions. Roman Catholicism took a different path. Mandatory celibacy for all priests, no marriage at all. Most Protestant churches went another direction entirely. No marriage restrictions for clergy whatsoever. 3 branches of Christianity, 3 different answers to the same question. But the Eastern Orthodox answer is the one that most faithfully preserves the original rule from the 2nd century letters. The Pastoral Epistles are still governing real people's lives. So what does all of this add up to? What was the author really doing? The author of the Pastoral Epistles is reinventing Paul. When the historical Paul had a more complex, less hierarchical vision, he worked with women like Phoebe, a deacon, and Prisca as co-laborers. The pastoral author takes Paul's name and authority and uses it to construct something new. The church as a rigid patriarchal household, every person, man, woman, elder, youth, widow, slave, assigned a fixed place. This was a strategy to make Christianity legible and respectable to the Roman world. A church that looked like a well-run household wouldn't attract suspicion from imperial authorities. The vocabulary, bishop, priest, deacon, the structures, Episcopal versus Presbyterian governance, the debates, can women be deacons? Must clergy marry? All trace back to these letters, 3 short letters, 4 offices, 1 household model, and nearly 2,000 years of institutional Christianity built on top of it.